All right. Good afternoon, or good evening, Chairman Sullivan. Thank you for joining us this evening. We're going to get started with our monthly webinar for District 7. I'm Warren Wheatthon. I'm the District 7 legislator. We have a few people online, but we hope more others will join. Um, just to let everyone know, we will be recording this session. This is not a public meeting, but a webinar. So we have some panelists we've invited, and I have a list of questions that I'll be starting off with. But our guest this evening is the chairman of the Kiowa Tribe, David Sullivan, and we have his team of from finance that will be joining well as we go through the summary part of our tribal budget. I want to welcome everybody. This is a recorded webinar. We will be recording and posting this webinar to our District 7 YouTube page. Currently, the budget, the document that was shared to the Kiowa Tribe website, is the most recent document for the individuals that might want to review the summary and kind of dig into some of the details. We're going to go over some questions here this evening. I appreciate everybody jumping online and making themselves available. The plan is for this webinar to last about an hour and a half till about 8:30. Those individuals that would like to ask questions, at the bottom of your screen, you will see a Q&A box. That is where you can submit a question. We can actually answer that question online, or if we need to type it out for you, we can do that as well. And then for our panelists here, I think we have Chairman Sullivan, William Weaver, also have Summer Palmer. Both Mr. Weaver and Summer Palmer are representing the finance department. And the current document is on the Kiowa Tribe website, is the appropriation bill and the summary that the legislature voted on and passed earlier this spring. So, Chairman, I'd like to just welcome you. If you'd like to give an introduction to yourself and this budget, and maybe kind of give us an overview of how this budget was dropped in your lap, really, and kind of like where we are and what your priorities are for seeing this budget meet the needs of our citizens of the tribe.
Oh, yes. Kitagita, David Sullivan Akan. Thank you. Thank you, Warren, for inviting us to come and join. It's always, as you said, it was somewhat dropped in my lap, I guess you could say, or we knew that we needed to get the process completed, but with everything that took place in March, there was a quick transition. And so we know that, with that process, there was, I knew we were pressed to get things, get the steps completed that we needed to do. And in spite of everything, we were able to get it completed. We went through the steps of meeting, negotiating, discussing areas of that needed to be adjusted. And I'm really glad, thankful for the team that's joining us here. All of our finance people. Uh, we have William Weaver, who is our former CFO. We still work with him as we're still trying to transition and hire a new CFO. And then Summer Palmer, our deputy CFO, and then Michelle Babcock, and she works with us as a consultant. Been with us for quite some time, and she really does. They all come in and they do a great job, and Michelle does a great job in terms of helping us. And I know they've been working hard on the audit in the middle of all of the budget preparation and getting all of that put together. So when I think back about everything that we did within that short amount of time, it's a little bit amazing, but I know that we did what we had to do, and we were able to make it work and get it to this point. Which I know last year we didn't get to do that, the year prior, I believe, and so I'm glad that we could get it to this point where we can put it before the people and put it to the vote And so, I know where, because of that transition time and the just just the nature of how we had to do it, we didn't get to get everything put to the printing office in time so that we could actually have it put together in a full document. But we're working on that now so that we can have that. I believe we'll at least have a document that will be similar to what was put out before, where we'll have graphs and charts, and it'll be a little easier to read. And so our media department is working on that. They'll be working with the finance team to get that put together. And so that will be posted on our website. As you mentioned, Legislator Wheaton, the the original or the summary has been placed on our website on the main page. You can see it there. There's a link, and you can click that, and you can see all the full document. And we will have the other documents up as well. And if depending on the questions and how the discussion goes, we can more than likely, potentially pull that up and share it tonight. Part of the, whatever areas we might want to look at. Unfortunately, I'll try, but I may have to rely on one of our finance folks. Hopefully, they're in front of a computer. Prior to this, I was on the KSWO TV station. We do a monthly report, Kiowa happenings there. Normally, it's about a 15 to 20 minute ordeal, but they asked me to stay longer and complete a podcast, and so that put me where I'm on the road. If you might have noticed, I'm in my vehicle now. But the good thing is the technology allows us to still do what we need to do anywhere we are. So I'm glad to be able to join everyone tonight, and I look forward to a good discussion.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I am at home too. I've been fighting a little bit of a cold here with the recent weather, so think we all have to join virtually when we can. So we'll just jump right in. I'm going to share my screen at this time to bring up. Chairman, can you see that okay? Okay, so this is what is on the tribe's website currently,
Right.
and we'll just start with the actual this will be what the will be placed on the ballot when it comes out in June. And so my intent for this first webinar is to really dive into the summary and get our citizens in the habit of being able to read this and understand it. So, Chairman, the first question I think we'd like to start off with that first line is the beginning cash balance restricted trust funds. If What is the investment fund casino distribution? It's at $25 million. Can you help us understand what that is, or somebody from the finance department, whoever is best able to address that? I kind of know what it is, but I'd like for us to talk about that. What is that, and what is the intent, and why is that listed on the ballot as such?
Okay. I'll start, and then if any of our finance folks would like to add in areas that I may have missed, I welcome that. So that distribution that you see there, that first line, that 25 plus million there, is basically an amount that had been sitting in an account that was not collecting interest, and it was there. It was there from prior administrations. There was a lot of various miscommunication, I guess you could say, as far as why it wasn't brought over. But we finally have gone through the process of going through the negotiation process, making sure that we get all of that or the funding in the right account so that it's an interest bearing account, and it's designed for us to uh, begin looking at a way for us to invest for the development of a revenue allocation plan, a shared dividend plan, if you would like to call it that. And so the process that the legislators and our our KIC, our branches we're all going, and we have been collaborating on this to develop the proper plan so that we're able to put this into a working process where we get a document or we get a formula in place where we'll be able to put these investment elements. There will be pieces of this that will go in certain funds, a growth fund, if you want to call it, or a permanent fund. We're still working on that. So we have an investment committee that meets monthly, and that includes myself, Legislator Wheaton, one of our deputy CFO at the moment, and we may now this 3-member committee was at the suggestion of this individual, a very very intelligent, very experienced individual consultant that we've been working with, who has worked with numerous tribes in over the last few years and continues to do so. And we, between all of us, we were able to figure out the right formula so that we're able to figure out a good plan for us to begin reinvesting in potential businesses. We haven't started any of that yet. We still are putting all the building blocks in place. We have to get the right pieces in place in order to be able to do that. So right now that funding is there. It's sitting there, and it's waiting for us to build the proper processes and the proper tools that will help us to utilize. Basically, you can consider that as a resource, or some people would call it a nest egg for the tribe. We can utilize that and build that up higher. And so the plan will be that we develop the formula that would provide a solid amount, and however that number fluctuates, we want it to increase, but that number of that information that's there, or the amount of that revenue allocation plan will follow the process of however much that amount is built. And so with that, we're looking at it to make sure that we have a solid plan in place. And we're like I said, we're meeting again this coming week to discuss some of the first steps and making sure that we get a good investment firm that connects with the outlook and the goals and the missions of the tribe, and make sure that we have a good fit. And so we're going through those steps to make sure that we do develop a solid plan in that sense, for not just the immediate needs of the tribe, but long term. And so that's where we want to develop our economic opportunities that will eventually move into and contribute to this investment fund. The casino distribution is just the first, because essentially, as we've talked about, I talk about this often on my radio segments and my reports that I give. We have our casino operations now. So that, aside from those funds and our federal dollars, some tax revenue, that's pretty much of what we have in terms of how we're operating. And we really need to get other revenue generating engines, if you want to call them, businesses in place. But we're working right now to make sure that we have all of the foundational elements in place. We're working very regularly. We're meeting quite a bit more with our legislators to make sure that we have all the foundational legislation in place, so that we can get all of the businesses and the codes and everything that needs to be in place, so that we're able to utilize these funds and then build upon and add more. So I think I answered that in several directions, but if I'd like to invite our federal, or our financial folks, if they'd like to add anything, if there was any areas that I missed.
So Chairman Sullivan is spot on. That is what occurred. Those are revenues that were left over after the casino collected all the revenues for the full year and paid their operating expenses. So that's called cash reserves. Additionally, two things to add to that, that number will increase daily and monthly because what the legislator worked with the chairman to do was to make sure that all the excess revenue at the end of each month gets transferred over to that fund. So that trust fund will continue to grow daily. When it was put in the budget, that was the balance there, but it is generating interest daily.
Thank you. That's a good point.
Thank you, Chairman. Just kind of wanted to also, we can dive into the revenue if you would like to go. I was going to kind of just go, if you want somebody from your team, we can go line by line if you'd like Mr. Weaver or Michelle Babcock, because revenue is what I understand is revenue is what we are projecting for the year to have income funds coming into the tribe, either from the casino operations, taxes that we collect, various funding agencies, BIA, Department of Labor, whoever you think is best to kind of walk us through just a general overview. I don't think we need a real detailed line by line, but just to kind of talk about where those funds are coming from would be great.
Okay. I'll just leave it up to, if Mr. Weaver would like to go, or if one of the other, if Summer or Michelle would like to jump in, or all three at one point or another.
Good afternoon or good evening. Yes, I can go ahead and speak to these. Just so everyone knows, I'm Summer Palmer. I'm the Deputy CFO for the Kiowa Tribe. I've been here for almost, I believe, 8 years now in the finance department. And the first few lines, like the oil and gas, state fuel, vehicle tax, those are revenues that we get from either the state, from oil leases, or vehicle tags. When you go to the tag office, and all that money, it becomes revenue for the tribe. We also have casino tax revenue that we receive from the casino, and the casino operations, which is funds that the casino sends us every month, and it totals up to $13 million. We also are expecting some indirect cost. We've always received indirect costs, but now we've finally calculated and guesstimated how much we will receive this year. And then we have quite a few transfer ins. And what this basically is that we have funds, but they're not available to us yet because we have not voted on them as a tribe. So we are expecting these transfers in from these pots of monies that are in bank accounts. And we also have restricted revenue, which is basically federal monies that come in. And we also have different things like for the KCOA or the Gaming Commission. And then there's just other projected revenues at the bottom. If there's a specific revenue line item we want to go into detail, and we can do that as well. But that's basically the general overview of all the revenues that we project for the upcoming 2026-2027 budget year.
Thanks, Summer. Could you kind of just really quickly talk to us about could you kind of dive into what is restricted revenue?
Yes. So restricted revenue is basically, like I stated before, it's like grant revenue where we receive these grants and we receive money for them, but that money is only specifically for that grant. And so we can't, as a tribe, vote to spend that money on other things, but that's okay because we still get funding for the programs that they're there to support. And so that's the difference between restricted revenue and normal rate revenue.
And so I think I'll go back to the other was here in just a second, but KCOA board operating budget, that funding comes directly from the casino. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so that is the money that the casino enterprise funds, and so they give $450,000 to that operating budget, and then that's earmarked only for that specific operation for the KCOA. The
Yes.
same with the gaming commission. That Kiowa Gaming Commission regulatory fee is $1.2 million. That also comes from the casino enterprise. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And so we have a restricted fund here too. So for example, what you were talking about is this SS, I guess it's a small business fund, or it's a Kiowa Tribe Loan Fund Development. That is a grant that was received from the U.S. Treasury. So that can only be used for, I guess, development of small businesses. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
And we haven't started that program yet. We just received the money for it.
So we can't really do anything with it until the people vote on it and people understand what that is, right?
Yes.
Okay. And then
So-
the 20%, okay, go ahead, Mr. Weaver.
Legislator Wheaton, let me give you a
Mhm.
little bit of information about that. Those are funds from the U.S. Treasury, and they're designed to be set up for loan, but you have to partner with an institution because it has to be underwritten and service and all of that nature. So as soon as the tribe gets to a point where they can partner with an institution, they'll have the SSBCI, but also the CFDI, which is Community Finance Development Infrastructure, to fund things for tribal members in the tribe.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification, Mr. Weaver. And then also can you talk to me, either Summer, I guess we'll start with you. If you could talk to us about what is the 20% tribal government operations line item here?
That I believe is a portion of funding that we have. Honestly, I'm not too familiar with it. In our, I don't know what you call it, 10% account.
20%, right?
Yes, but I think in our finance it's called 10%. But it's in that
Okay.
account, or those are like monies that we have set aside. Again, once again, we can only use them for specific purpose. I don't believe we've ever drawn down. I don't believe we ever used those funds before, but it's there just in case we need them for the year. So that way we can, vote on them properly.
hmm They're there to be drawn down, but we haven't used those, at least since I've been in the legislature. We've not drawn down any money from that account.
No, I've been here for 8 years. We've never drawn from that account.
Okay. And then the self-governance program revenue, what is that this year, Summer? That's a new line item, I think.
Oh, I believe that's the federal programs. I believe
Okay,
Chairman
I got
Spotted
you.
wanted us to rename it.
I got you. Yeah, that's a different name, but that is, I think that's later on in the budget. We'll talk about that. Okay. So it's moving away from what used to be called, I think it was listed as Public Law 638 programs, and he renamed it to self-governance because that's eventually where we want to go.
Yes.
And then other government program revenue is, for example, we'll get to it, but all the other funding agencies. So self-governance program, that comes from the Bureau of Indian Affairs, whereas other government program revenue includes if we have funds that are utilized for, say, for example, Department of Transportation, Department of Labor, there might be another funding agency that will fall under other government revenue, whereas self-governance is primarily from the Bureau of Indian Affairs, those grants, higher education, social services, Indian child welfare. Those programs are 638 programs, and so, or were, Now we were renaming that to self-governance. So we're saying here typically we have we're saying here that we have $14 million in self-governance funding from the Bureau of Indian Affairs, and then right below that, we're saying other government program revenue, which we'll dive into later, is $20 million. Is that a fair assessment, Summer?
Yes, perfect.
Okay. Okay,
So,
thank you.
one more thing, Legislator Wheaton,
Go ahead, Mr. Weaver.
that self-governance status that Chairman Sullivan and the legislature and the financiers worked on with the tribe has elevated the tribe to a level of a self-governance of its own, which simply means the programs that are included in there are no longer under the 638. Those monies will come directly to the tribe, and the tribe will be responsible to manage and administer them. So that's the removal of that, where you see that big line. It's a conglomerate of all programs that are included, like transportation and natural resources and law enforcement, that you will get all their funding at one time, and the tribe will be incumbent to manage it.
Okay.
And the other
Thank
side is the ISDEA, the 477, and those are the education and the health and services programs, and those will come in as well.
Absolutely. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Weaver. Mr. Weaver, could you kind of talk to me about what what these programs right here mean? Transfer in.
Yes, sir, Legislator Wheaton. So, as Ms. Palmer stated, those were revenues that were discovered in accounts that, until the legislator made the modifications and the resolutions, that were some funds in some accounts that were identified, and monies that were moved around that begin to gain interest. And so, until they're recognized in the budget, they cannot be expended. So, to recognize them in the budget, that's what Ms. Palmer said, that they were placed in as transfer ends. So they're now revenues that can be expended.
Thank you very much. And then we also have the LATCF. Mr. Weaver, I'm asking these questions because I know a lot of citizens, they look at the budget and they're like, they don't understand what any of this is. What is the LATCF for those that are on the call here tonight?
Ms. Palmer can speak to that directly. She actually manages that, but that's
okay.
Another little form of ARPA fund.
Okay. Yes, the LATCF funding is from the Treasury, and we still have some funds available from that program, and that's what that specifically was referring to. That's the leftover funds that we have.
Okay. And then we're projecting to get that revenue in about $400,000, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And if you recall, Legislator Wheaton, that was where the money from the emergency relief fund was also dedicated to tribal members.
Yeah, when we had that issue with the government shutdown. Okay. So the total operating revenue we are projected to utilize for 26 and 27 is at 58,095,000 approximately. And so all these streams of revenue, this is what the tribe's going to bring in. And it's not, so that $25 million, that is not included in the revenue. Is that correct? Mr. Weaver, that 25 million?
That is correct, Legislator Wheaton. If you scroll back up to the top, that's why it says a beginning cash balance. That means it already exists. It is not going to come in, it already exists. So that's your what you call reserves, but that's your investment.
So all these numbers below that add up to 58,095,000. Okay. Thank you very much. I just, like I said, asking the questions that when citizens see this on the ballot, they're going to say, what is this? And then we'll talk about ways to kind of dig in and have a bit greater understanding for them in the future. Okay, so if we look at the general budget below that, so after revenue, then we talk about the plans for the chairman for all the programs, divisions. How are they going to execute that 58,095,000 for tribal operations? So under the general budget, the executive office, the executive branch is expected to expend $2.8 million to fund that office. Does the chairman want to talk a little bit about what that funds exactly?
Yes, that amount there is primarily, I would say the when you're looking at, can you hear me? I want to make
Oh,
sure I
yes. Yes, I
muted.
can hear you fine.
Wasn't sure. I had to make sure I unmuted myself.
I understand.
Yeah, so a good chunk of it, you're looking at some of the positions because that's where we have our the chairman, the vice chairman salary. We have the four executive directors' salaries there. Then you have fringe benefits that you're looking about us for the program branch for the salary positions. You're looking at about a little over 725,000, fringe benefits of 181, a little bit over that. There'll be some training, staff development, executive training, about 63K. Services, that includes professional services. That's where if we need to provide, have some form of operational consultants or something in that area in terms of being able to operate our some of our business developments, or in that sense, then we have a line item there. Professional supplement, legal services, we've cut that down. And I know in the past, we had some discussion about where we had a position that wasn't necessarily, it was just put in place by our former chairman. And so we're looking at, instead of having an attorney general, we have a general counsel, and that's more in line with the Constitution. And so then we do have an amount that allows, so about 1.2 million there for land acquisition, for us to be able to conduct real estate purchases if we see the need for that, and we operate in that process in alignment with the legislators, and make sure that we're operating. We tried and made an attempt this past year recently, but we were not able to get that. It was a significant property that had historical significance for the tribe, but we weren't able to accomplish that. And then it's just the normal processes of office supplies, utilities, communications, advertising, postage. Like I said, when we get to the point where we can finalize that, the more itemized part, then that will be posted on the website where everyone can look at those numbers and be able to take their time to digest it and look it over. And then if there are other questions, we can go over that again in a
Okay.
upcoming webinar.
Thank you. Yes, we could do that at a later time as it gets closer to the election.
Yes.
Economic development. So my understanding, Chairman, is Kiowa Inc. is the economic development arm of the tribe, but it's never had any funding to move forward. So that
That's
is
right.
that $1 million is a beginning for the tribe to start an economic development enterprise.
That's right. And, those are, even the name might be changing as we continue. Like I said, we're working, as I said earlier, we're working with the legislative body to make sure that we're putting the proper structure in place for economic development ventures. And we're looking in, health development, health options, looking at infrastructure development, such as broadband, which we've announced that recently. There's a partnership that we currently have, which is an opportunity that through a BEAD funding grant that was provided not to the tribe developed directly, but it was provided to a local internet service provider that we're partnering with, as well as a tribe, the Otoe Missouri tribe. And so we want to make sure that we utilize those funds. I know in the past the funds were potentially, I think that we never received an actual in-hand grant award as far as I know, but we did have noticed that we were potentially getting some funding, and then it was changed over when the Trump administration came into office, and it was switched over for where it went directly to internet service providers. And so I'm glad that we were able to do that, or to still access some of that funding to help our tribal members, tribal citizens, be able to, we can build up our access and in terms of fiber broadband and some of the resources that are needed so that we can get that access out there in our areas that haven't been served or need to have better services.
Okay. And then right below that is law enforcement.
Yes. Yes, we have our law enforcement is a there it's still a growing process. I'm not sure if trying to remember, I think we've reached a point where it's just about a year old in that sense. And so they have been working diligently, writing grants to add to the BIA funding that comes over for BIA law enforcement. So we had the shares that were brought over, and I know Mr. Weaver and Summer and Michelle can discuss that in greater detail, since they were working on this from the beginning as the law enforcement department was put in place, and there were funding elements and pieces that were tribal shares were brought in, and then just making sure that all of the equipment was in place. And I'm really happy to see how the growth has developed. Our grant writer that's for the most part assigned just to the law enforcement, Brittany Griner, has been really putting some really good grants together, and they've received quite a few. I don't even know the current number as far as the total number of grant dollars that they've received, but it's been pretty significant. And it's a little bit, I think it's more than what you're seeing there, but I believe that'll be reflected in another area. But
Yes.
Is there anything else that I missed, or that any one of you would like to add from our finance team?
So, Chairman, or maybe one of the finance members might want to answer this. My question here is, this number here is what the tribe is funding from their operations budget, but there is we'll get to it later on, but there is a grant that the law enforcement agency also operates off of. Is that correct?
That's right.
Yeah.
Yes, in addition to that, Legislator Wheaton,
Mhm.
any services the BIA provides to the tribe or the DOI provides to the tribe, once the tribe takes over those responsibilities, those shares become the possession and the ownership of the tribe, and they have to administer themselves. So now that the tribe has its own law enforcement, BIA kind of no longer has its jurisdiction over them. They'll
Mhm.
help in the surrounding areas, but the tribe is primarily responsible for its own law enforcement. So on the other side, as Chairman Sullivan said, Ms. Griner has written in excess of, the last I checked, was about $2.5 million worth of grants. So they have funding of about $2.5 million, and she's continuing to add on to that.
Yes.
Thank you for that. Okay. And then the next is these are tribally funded programs. Of course, the Election Commission administers our elections on behalf of the tribe. Enrollment, that 207,000, that funds our enrollment department, who tracks our enrollment numbers. Tribal Historic Preservation, we have a department that does our Section 108 consulting, our TIPO office. That's what that 113,000. That's what that funds, along with our Kiowa Museum and 134,000. Kiowa Language Program and all our teachers there in Anadarko. That program's will spend about 300,000 of our tribal budget, and we have a Natural Resources Department with their staffing, 225,000, and then Social Services. That looks to be like an increase. Social Services, $2,022,000. Is that accurate, Mr. Weaver or Summer? Is that
Yes,
1 million?
because we have ran out of the ARPA funding, so now we have to utilize tribal funds for social services. Not only social services, but burial assistance, and that takes quite a bit of funding.
And that will come out of that $2 million there.
Yes, that's correct.
So I know that it's important because, and I focus in on that because a lot of tribal citizens were aware that their, burial assistance, we still need help or to help our citizens, really, bury their loved ones with dignity and respect. And so that is why that was an increase in social service funding. I just wanted to kind of key in on that. Thank you. These are still programs that are tribally funded out of that 58 million, or the funding revenue. Reentry program. We have a Kiowa Tribe reentry program for those citizens that are coming out of incarceration. That's at $163,000. Veterans Assistance Program, $128,000. Kiowa Tribe Youth Development Program, $149,000. And then the Tax Commission, the Kiowa Tribe Tax Commission, their budget is set at $414,000. Now, if we go below that, the other tribal member services, we've always had a question about that, Summer, and maybe you're the person that can kind of talk to us about what are tribal member services.
Tribal member services, it comprises of different areas, such as the Kiowa Princess stipend, the insurance for the tribe and the building property, the community assistance sponsorships,
Okay.
things like that. It's all totaled up into tribal member services.
Okay. Thank you very much. Just kind of giving an overview for those that are on the call. And then we have the elder payment scheduled at $1,122,000. And we have a supplement that goes along with our AOA program at $70,000. That is a requirement along with our AOA grant. We have to it's an in-kind fund, as well as a supplement for higher education. That supplement is scheduled at $391,000. And so those are the programs that will be funded for the executive branch from this tribal revenue. Following the executive branch, we have three other branches of government. Our legislative branch is projected to spend $1.7 million. Judicial, $671,000. And then the Kiowa Indian Council, $117,000 below that. For those three branches together are projected to spend $2.5 million for the next year. Okay. So this is the indirect cost administration. Summer, do you want to talk about what this is right here? This indirect cost administration?
Yes, so indirect cost administration, it basically comprises all of the indirect cost programs. That includes admin, finance, human resources, procurement, contracts and grants, information and technology, media and outreach, security, and maintenance. And they're called indirect because all of these programs directly support the entire tribe. For example, you can take childcare or Head Start. All of them are going to need security, maintenance, media, IT, procurement, finance, HR. And so that's basically what these indirect cost programs mean. And when we get federal grants, we get an indirect cost allocation, and that money that we receive goes directly to funding these departments. So that's what indirect cost is.
So when we take our indirect cost out, it goes into a fund, and that's what this $5 million will come from. Is that fund
Yes.
and we pull our indirect costs from all of our grant programs it generates a fund, and that's where that $5.6 million will fund these programs.
Yes.
So under that,
A portion of it, I want to clarify, not all.
not
some
all
of
of it, but a portion of it.
But yeah.
Okay. So administration office, the finance office, human resource office, procurement, grants, and contracts office, information technology, media and outreach, security, and maintenance.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Thank you very much. And so our tribal budget, so that out of that 58 million, we're saying here 19 million of this will be for the tribal budget, correct? In revenue?
Yes. 19 million out of the 58 out of the revenue will come. Yeah.
For a tribal budget. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we already had a question, and we want to ask this real quick. The KC Way, we actually had 450,000 budgeted as revenue. This is a different number right here. Can you explain that for us, please? That 282, it's a project. Now we're projecting. Are we going to downsize the KCOA, or is there a reason why that number is inconsistent with what was taken in as revenue?
I personally not familiar. If maybe that might be a mistake. I'm not sure, honestly.
Can you scroll back up, Legislator Wheaton, please, back to.
So you see what I'm discussing here, right here.
Correct.
Under restricted revenue.
Correct. So what you see here in this line, back up at that line up top, that's the revenue that's going to be transferred over from the fees and things of that nature from the casino to fund the KCOA. So that's the pot of money they're given.
Okay.
When you go down, I believe you're showing
from the casino.
Correct. Yep. When you go down, I believe you're showing expenditures, if I'm not mistaken, down here where you see that 282. That's what they've been budgeted. So there's sometimes there's going to be more revenue come in than you actually spend. It's not going to be penny for penny.
And so that's historical. That's from the historical data. That's what they've spent. They've never spent that whole $450,000.
Yes, and when we were working on the budget, I believe that was brought up as well when you provided those calculations.
Okay. So what we're saying here is from the casino, from the fees, the KCOA draws in 450,000 for revenue, but historically through historical expenditures, you're seeing here we are only budgeting $282,000. Is that correct?
I believe that's correct. I believe that is correct.
Okay, thank you very much. I just wanted to clarify that. And then we have the Kiowa Gaming budget or Gaming Commission budget at $1.2 million. The United States, we talked about the Small Business Loan Fund, the Kiowa Tribe Loan Fund, $791,000. And then our 20% operations fund, which is an account we've never drawn money from. It keeps on accruing until the tribal government actually needs that $1.7 million. Below that, if we go to Indian self-government's programs, we have this is what we're talking about, the 477, the 630, Public Law 638 grants. These come from different departments within the Bureau of Indian Affairs. They give money for transportation improvement planning. These are actually like there's a contract that is developed from the funding agency, and they are the ones that establish these numbers. So, for example, when we talk about agriculture management, the BIA is telling us we're going to get this amount, 420,000, for agriculture management. The BIA is also telling us we're going to receive 115,000 for EPA land management. What is the GTG, Mr. Weaver? Can you kind of enlighten us what that is?
Yes. So that G2G is actually the transportation allocation from the BIA, but it's called G2G because it went from the 638 restricted contract to direct to government before we had self-government.
Government to government. I see.
Yes. And that was renegotiated in the compact to be included in the self-governance. So was approved and awarded before, and that's why it's called G2G, which simply means government to government, from the federal government straight to the tribal government to manage.
Okay. And that's for transportation.
Yes, sir.
And if we go to higher education is expected to get $2 million from the Bureau of Indian Affairs. Indian Child Welfare, also $2 million. JPT, the Job Placement and Training, vocational training, $741,000. And this is what we were talking about earlier. Our law enforcement department will projected to receive $633,000 in contract support for the law enforcement agency. And social services still receives money as well, $480,000 to support their social services and KEYS program. Tribal Community Resilience. Can you enlighten us, Mr. Weaver, what that program is for?
I can speak to that. That's part of the agriculture part of grant. Ephraim Kelly is the one overseeing that.
Okay, so that's a part of the the Natural Resources Department.
Yes.
Okay. We have another tribal program from the Bureau, the Tribal Court. We receive $1.1 million. Groundwater resource, I'm assuming that's also natural resources, $200,000. Then we have a tribal transportation and road maintenance program at $2.5 million. Water management and wildland fire management at $85,000 and almost $35,000. So these are self-governance programs. The projected revenue for the next year is $14 million. That will also be included as part of the revenue the tribe is planning to spend for the year. So that is another, I guess, portion of the pie. We talked about $14 million of that $58 million is in those self-governance programs funds that we will receive through the BIA.
One more additional.
Go ahead.
Legislator Wheaton, one more additional thing on that's a benefit to the tribe. Is historically, when they were 638, it was reimbursement basis. You'd spend it and then you'd get it back, or they would allocate a portion of it. With the self-governance, whatever the government funds, if the government funds 6 months or the full 12 months of the year, that will be sent to the tribe directly in full at one time. The benefit of that is if that money is in the treasury with the tribe to manage it, they can gain interest and what's called program income on it. That additional collection of money from the interest gained in that money can be used to further enhance the services and advancement of the programs to the tribal members.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Weaver. Okay, so let's go. So when we talk about other government programs, we are talking about other government funding agencies that are external to the Bureau of Indian Affairs. For example, our AOA, our Title VI program, $189,000, and then also Caregiver, Title VI, $71,000. So that is our Administration on Aging. This is what they receive in grant funds. These three programs. Oops, sorry, I delete that. My mouse ran away from me. These three programs are what we receive from grants from the Administration on Aging, but it's supplemented by a tribal fund as well. Then we have child care below that at $1.6 million. Community Health Representative CHR program, $86,000. Coordinated Tribal Assistance Solicitation at $900,000. Family Preservation Grant, $116,000. Food distribution at $396,000. We have the General Assistance Fund for the EPA at $100,000. Head Start, $1.3 million. Kiowa Tribe Housing Authority, $8 million. Kiowa, the KDAP, Kiowa Alcohol and Drug Abuse Program at $280,000. Kiowa Teen Prevention Network, $546,000. Iowa Tribal Transit Program, that's the Fast Trans at $232,000. LIHEAP assistance, that's a grant we received to help elders pay their lighting and heating bills in the winter months and summer months at $61,000. Then we have a local and tribal consistency fund emergency assistance, $400. Special diabetes program, $90,000. Special tribal criminal jurisdiction program, $1.4 million. Supplemental youth services, $159,000. Then we have our Title IV programs, Tarot, Justice System, Strategic Planning, Tribal Resources Grant Equipment Training. Also, Tribal Resources Grant Hiring Program. That is actually something new I haven't seen on here before, but it's at $519,000. Tribal Victim Services, 2.7, and then Water Pollution Control Program at $65,000. And then right at the end, we have our WIOA Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act at $227,000. So we talked about the $20 million comes from those other government programs. For the annual budget is $58,095,000 that they expect to expend for the 2026-2027 fiscal year. So I wanted to run through that real quick just to have an overview, and now I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Like the chairman said earlier, you can read through this whole appropriation bill as well as the summary that will show up on the ballot. That is available on the tribe's website currently, kiowatribe.org. Okay, now I'm going to jump over. I'm going to go into my questions, Chairman.
Okay.
So, Chairman, I'm going to start, and then if anyone wants to ask a question, you can put your question down in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen, and we'll be happy to ask your question. So, Chairman, what are your priorities outlined in this 2026-27 budget, and how were those priorities determined?
The priorities that, we've outlined are, we're looking at, making sure that we're, for one, making sure that we're being a bit more, I don't want to say frugal, but we're just being better stewards of the funds. I know just looking at the last few years, our funding has dropped, and we're in a state of, I guess you could call it unpredictability with the federal dollars. There are things changing, the financial structure with the war going on. There are just a lot of things that I know that we need to consider. So one of those areas for me has been just making sure that we're prioritizing all of those funds, prioritizing and making sure that what we expend is exactly what we need. I'm really strongly looking to build up our internal structures and make sure that while and simultaneously trying to build our economic development. That's something I noticed when I was serving in the vice chair role, that we really needed to, we were spending a lot of time looking into economic development, but there was just a need for further infrastructure and making sure that we have all of our systems operating in a greater and efficient manner. And I know there were a lot of different individuals working on that, but there just wasn't enough. I don't know. We didn't have all the parts, and so to speak. So we're looking at making sure that we're prioritizing. First off, is communication and working with each other, working with our legislative body, working with our judicial branch, working and making sure that we're reporting to, and in that element of what I've been talking about for quite some time, and that's making sure that we're being transparent. And part of that is having those reports, whether it's video or verbal or radio, but also making sure that we follow that up with actual reports on our website. And because the website is where we're primarily going to be putting information out, and then the supplemental information will go out on Facebook, other sources of or other social media platforms. And so just looking at all of those areas, we want to make sure that we're building up our internal capacities. The finance office is a key element that touches almost every part of our government, and it connects to our business arm that we're in the process of forming. So it's key for us to have a treasurer. It's key for us to have a CFO, and that all of those parts are working in unison with our executive directors and working in part, in a just a solid way with all of the pieces that we have out there. So, we're looking at really enhancing our going out, even though as I mentioned before, the federal dollars, the grants and everything they're fluctuating, but that doesn't mean that they're fully going away. So we're really making sure that we are going after targeted grants, targeted programs that will help us on a long range process. My vice chair, Donna Ritchie, and I, we've been meeting and restructuring in terms of, looking at where we were, what we're doing now, and what we want to see. So we're forming up, at least for ourselves, an initial planning process of making sure that we're covering all of the pieces that we need to do in all areas of the government. Because there's just so many moving parts to everything, we want to make sure that we're not missing anything. And I'll give you an example. Today we were talking about some of the indirect cost process and the way that we need to adjust and look at how our departments are operating, how we make sure that we allocate for simple things like making sure that we have enough IT support, not just in Carnegie, but in Anadarko. I've had some of our directors indicate, they kind of have to wait a while for that support. And so we need to really dig into that and look at how we can make sure that those support systems are there so that our people, can be more efficient and more just more, they're able to be more responsive to our people and the needs and be more proactive. And that's where, for me, I want to get to that point where we're proactive and not as reactive as we may have been. I know that's not the case for every area, every department, but those are some of the areas. And I know I don't want to take up a whole lot of time with that part. If I can work in some more, but I want to stop so you can ask another question, or if there are other.
Sure. So my next question, Chairman, is for budget transparency. I think a lot of our citizens feel like there's a lot that this budget leaves a lot of unanswered questions because it is a summary. What is the plan to deliver more transparency to those tribal citizens who might want to? I know last year it was a good step to have a booklet, but we're talking about how do we fill in those gaps and have people understand what each program is expending on, and what are they doing? What are the salaries of those? What is your plan for making sure that transparency on the budget is provided to citizens?
Yeah, like I mentioned, we were talking, I think, a little bit at the beginning about the process of posting those informational portions that we talked about, where they're online in terms of our website, where you can go, you can look at that, you can observe it, and you can see those outlines of as far as, and when you break that down and put it into a PDF document, it's a pretty sizable document. And so, earlier, I know I don't believe there was, I can't remember for sure if there was one that was printed out last year, but it may have been the year before. but that was a hard copy for those that were there at the KIC. But I know that we have so many of our District 7 constituents that are out there that don't get to see that document. So that's why, for me, I want to make sure that we're putting it on the website. Then we'll supplement that with our social media platforms so that that can be accessed by our District 7 constituents. And my thought, and I believe you've already alluded to this earlier, is that we will have future webinars prior to the upcoming election so that we can go
Absolutely.
over those areas. And anyone that's interested, we'll make sure that we get the word out and make sure that we can get all of our people that can speak to every one of those pieces of the budget and make sure that we have that in place.
So I have a question. My next question is it's in regards to funding these salaries and positions that are, we try to establish positions that are budgeted. Those salaries need to be budgeted. That's the right thing to do.
Yes.
Funded or improperly created positions, or do you believe that those positions are unconstitutional? And what is your thought on how do we correct that and make sure that there's a lot of because our tribal members talk, there's a lot of positions that were created that weren't budgeted. What is your strategy for correcting that in the future?
My strategy is to follow the process of making sure that we line up with the constitutional areas. As I mentioned before, we had an AG that wasn't supported in that, for that particular position wasn't authorized, and so my function or my outlook and the way that I'm looking at and the way I'm planning to correct or make sure that we're putting things in place is that we'll follow the process and that we work with the legislators to get that authorization in place. And I know I've had different people come to me and say, "Well, this is something the chairman can approve," and I correct them and say, "Yes, that could be partially true, but without following the authorizations, the for one, the main thing is the Constitution, and then the connected legislation, the policies and procedures that the chairman follows that and has to follow that. And so that's where I stand on it, and I'll continue that. And I've said that before that, some people don't like that. They want to do or they would like for me to do what was done in prior times. And I'm not going to do that because I believe that has kept us from advancing to where we should be. It may not have been the only reason, but it was a contributing factor. And so for me, on my part, I want to do what I can do to bring unity about within our branches and make sure that we're following the process accordingly, not just tribal, but federal requirements and policies. So that but be smart about what we do. I talked to our executive directors, we just met this past week, and I said, we can't afford to rush. We want to have a sense of urgency, but we have to make sure we put the foundational elements in place to build out our businesses, build out those opportunities. And if there are pieces of it that we don't understand, then we need to find someone that can help us understand it and not rush. And that's the hard part, because when you look at other surrounding tribes, you see where they're at in certain areas, such as some contracting elements or their gaming or everything, and you want to say, "Oh man, we need to move fast." But I know we have to do it in a solid way because we can't afford any. If I wanted to use a sports analogy, we can't afford strikeouts. We have to hit home runs from this point on as much as possible. I know we might still have an issue here and there, but we want to make sure that everyone is working together, we're moving together, and that if we do have a hiccup, it's not so much that's going to really rock us out of out of our forward direction. And so for me, that's my goal, and I'll stop there.
Thank you, Chairman. I appreciate that. Our next question is focused on the KCOA. One of our citizens sent in the question, and the question is, why is the tribe paying a stipend for part-time labor? I'm assuming they're talking about the KCOA board members and maybe staff members that work for the KCOA. And then stack on top, paying for meeting fees, especially quorum and non-quorum meetings. What do you have a response to that question? I know that the KCOA has been in functioning for some time, but prior to you coming on board. But what are
That's
your
right.
thoughts on that question?
Well, as far as part-time, I would need to dig into that a little more. I know of the meeting fees, and I know that was set quite some time ago by the KCOA, and there it is significant, more so than other boards and commissions. And that's the process we have to look at, because for me as the chairman, I do have that connection to that, but I don't have full oversight because of the way it's set up. And I know that this is something that was required of us to set. We didn't have the KCOA, we didn't have the KGC up until just recently. But that was a requirement that was brought about by the National Indian Gaming Commission in order for us to keep and maintain our gaming operations, because of what had been done in the past. And so we're still looking at making sure that we can keep it open and make sure that NIGC doesn't provide further sanctions, or even worse, provide something to where they try to shut us down. And we were, as I came into office and started meeting with our legal folks, they started giving me all of the details of what was happening and what had happened, and suggesting, steps to take. But it was ultimately my decision. And so I made one choice, an initial choice. And there will be more, but I knew that I needed to, go through a process. And I listened to the advice that I was given. But I know that there is a lot that we need to look into in our gaming operations, in our construction process. I met with our CEO today, and we discussed quite a bit, and it was a good meeting. And we also met last week, Vice Chair and I. We met both with the casino leadership and the Kiowa Gaming Commission in a meeting to discuss certain issues that had arisen, and it was a good meeting. We had I think we were able to come to a good place of everyone being on the same page. And so, in terms of making sure I'm connecting to the elements of the question, there are areas that need to be adjusted, and as I am given more time, and I'm able to dig into that more to see how that operates. I know we don't have a full operational authority now. We have 2 vacancies that I'm working on now with the legislative body to fill those. And we, based on the requirements, we want to have Kiowa citizens in those positions. And so, but we also have our other 2 that are transitioning off. And so there are several things that we need to look at in terms of staffing, in terms of KCOA stipends. So there's just a lot there, but we'll work on it. We're going to continue to work on it and make sure that we're following all the legislative authorizations, the charters and everything, and make sure that we really dig into it and do it the right way.
Absolutely. So, some concerns have been raised with regard to proposed. We have a lot of opioid settlement funds that came to the tribe. This one-time funding. Should that funding be used to support long-term investments such as land or facilities, and not high salaries or unsustainable salaries within the tribe?
Those are things that we're looking at. We wanted to. I know those fit within the requirements or not the requirements, but the allowable options that you can use that for. But we are looking at, we don't want to necessarily use that for, where it's just dwindled away. I know there at one point there were plans to purchase and build a home or some type of a home which is needed, and we would need that, but it, we're still looking and trying to make sure that we determine the best strategy for the use of that and make sure that we're supplementing it with other resources. And so, yeah, the process of salaries and all of that are, some of that is needed, but we also are looking at other grants and other sources to make sure that we're doing what we need to do. And one of the good things that we did, and kind of connects back to your other question, is making sure that we're following the authorization process. And so, there was a program created called the Healing Way that didn't have that authorization, and so we've scaled that back, and we've moved that back into the proper process, and we've moved that back into the Health and Human Services. We've had to reduce some of those initial proposed areas, and the main reason for that is because they're of just this question that we're talking about. The funds are finite, they're limited, and so we want to make sure that we're using them to, with the best strategy in place. And sometimes that required what we did, which is move it back where it needed to be and make sure it's supported by the authorizations that it needs to have.
So, Chairman, I have a question about elder support. Does this budget meet the needs of our elder population? And I am assuming we're talking about elder payment in the future. Does this budget support those needs for where we want to be with our elders for this upcoming year?
I believe so, based on discussions that I recall us having when we were first proposing this. And I know even when the legislative body and we were all negotiating, we did look at that, and we wanted to make sure that we were able to meet what we had been giving. We didn't want to go less. We had to make some what would you call it, adjustments to make sure that we could do that. Not only that area, but also in our student services support. That we want to make sure that we're supporting our students when it's time for those back to school needs that they have and continue to have each year. And so, as I know Mr. Weaver mentioned earlier, that it was challenging because we were having to operate in the past year and in part of the year prior based on a budget that no longer had a pretty significant amount of funding, ARPA funding, and that helped to supplement quite a few areas within our overall tribal budget. And so, if you look back, I know I was able to look back and to see the significant drop of our overall budget from a couple of years back to now, and we're down. I don't know the exact number. I think Mr. Weaver or Summer could give us that exact number, but we've had to significantly reduce it because those dollars are no longer there. And so that goes back to what I was saying earlier. And one of my priorities is making sure that we're doing what we need to do, and that we're being good stewards of the funds that we do have, and that we're prioritizing and aligning everything to a strategic plan that is still forming and we're still going to work in that, which would include our executive and legislative, judicial, KIC, and make sure we're getting that giving the stakeholders opportunity to meet and discuss. And that's, for me, one of the things that I plan to continue to do, and that's go out and gather feedback. We did some of that. I know we did some of that in connection to the campaign, but that's not the only reason I was doing it. I do it because I want to hear from our people, and I want to go out and go out to District 7 in state, and eventually go out of state and find those areas where we can actually go in person and listen and ask questions and bring that feedback back to where we are. And I want to make sure that everyone feels a part of that and a part of what we're doing and how we're moving forward.
Uh, Chairman, I have a question here about it. Does the current budget uh, account for unforeseen emergencies and contingencies for the tribe?
I believe it does to the best of our ability. We have, we're looking at, we do have several areas that have those built-in contingencies in place. And I can tell you that when you're talking about an emergency program, I met with our law enforcement and met with our emergency management director. And we want to make sure that we're not just planning for budgetary issues, but we're also planning for physical issues and making sure that their main concern was asking me what is my stance and outlook for emergency management, emergency preparation. I said I'm definitely in. It's not even a question. We have to build in for any contingency. We have to be able to have the structures, the management plans in place, and that's what a lot of what we're doing by building in. And we have that, when we were talking about the beginning, when we have that investment fund, and we're building those initial foundational elements to help us have not just what we have now, but further cash reserves and opportunities to expand it, but also increase, just the overall uh, supports for our people, which would include, whether it's a revenue allocation process or it's, services or just overall development for them. The what do you call it? The loan fund is one opportunity where our people, those that are willing to get out and work and develop a business plan and develop and become an entrepreneur in our community. Those are funds that they're there for them. And so we want to make sure we're matching up the supports with that. I've been working on talking to people out at different tribes that already have programs where they can provide training to our people and help them from the point of developing the business plan all the way through to, even provide some support while they're even operating. And then also looking at workforce development options so that as we're developing these new businesses, we also are aligning it with our training so that our people can go to work and they can go work in these in the Kiowa utility program, and they can go to work in our health operations that we want to develop, or anything else that we want to look at. So there's a whole overall structure to what we want to see, not just in this budget, but all this budget connects to all of those areas and pieces that we want to see and how we want to see our people grow and our tribe just continue to go and move on an upward trajectory.
Another question, Chairman. Does this budget support the preservation and promotion of Kiowa language, culture, and traditions?
Yes, I believe it does in terms of the support systems that we have in place for our language program and how we have our teacher candidates. I'm very proud to be able to go and go to the various schools that we have locally, and I'm excited to see how that can grow down the road and to see where the language elements are there. We have the teacher candidates, and so it's good to know that we're not going to have a loss of that language in our culture. And just the other day, just being able to attend Saturday, what you provided there at Red Buffalo Hall with the Little Rabbit songs and the dances. I spoke about that earlier when I was on the KSWO Kiowa Happenings, and I mentioned it again on my report that those are the parts and the pieces and the important part of, and I'm very, my goal is to see that increase as much as we can. More activities, more training, more opportunities, more funding that can go towards those. And so I believe the current budget provides the solid support for that. But I know that it's never in terms of I think it's always never enough. But the more down the road we can do, the better. I want to see our bison program grow. I want to see a horse program grow. I know they're working right now with, Jay Mule is working on something like that, at least beginning stages. And I'd like to see that, improve or increase, but with a solid plan. We want to make sure that we don't overextend ourselves, but, as we go and we, make sure we put things together that will help us with our overall language and culture. I met with just briefly the other day at our bison harvest and met with a couple of our leaders, our Gourd Clan leaders, and I've talked to our leadership in the Tonkonga, and I've told them, that I want to be supportive as much as I can through the financial options, and then whatever else we can, think of. I definitely want to be a part and be a helpful support system, and whatever I can bring through our executive directors and our directors, that we'll be able to bring that together and really fully support those cultural. I'd say they're core pieces of who we are. We have to have it.
Chairman, a last question here. Does this budget set the stage towards long-term financial stability and growth for the Kiowa tribe?
Yes, it does. And part of it, I won't, talking about what I mentioned before about the fact that we have this casino distribution as a beginning piece to build on. It's a foundation for us to build on. And then, we have a solid team now in our executive branch and our executive directors who, the expertise level is there. And that's where, for me, I've been talking to them and saying, in the past, we've had to rely on outside sources, consultants, whatever that may be. But I want us to get to the point where our capacity is built to the point where we do not need outside consultants. We don't need to pay people. We have the capacity to do what we need to do. And if we don't, then we need to build it. And so, that's where, for me, everything that I see in the budget, all of these pieces that you see are all designed and structured for that, in terms of making sure that we're expanding what we need in terms of more federal dollars. We're not going to stop writing grants. We're going to continue to write grants. We're going to continue to seek not just federal, but private sources and anything else we can do, and looking at ways where we can even fundraise in some ways with, through private donations and private capital, and making sure that we're moving forward with all of those pieces that we want to see, and getting creative, innovative in terms of how we function and how we operate as a tribe, as a nation, to really move towards that sovereignty structure, or that sovereignty the goals that we have for many of our areas. There's so many things I could talk about, and I know we're getting short on time, but I just want to just say that this is a good step for us in moving us forward for long-term longevity, sustainability, and I'm looking forward to, working as long as Dalkey wants me to do that. But I've always said, for me, I'm not building this. I'm not here to make sure I keep myself in office. I'm building it so that there are pieces here that last beyond me, and I prepare it for the next one to do the same and take it even further than I do.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you for making time to be with us here this evening. Any final comments as we close out, Chairman?
My only comment, or I don't want to go a whole long time, but I just ask that everyone would keep Anadarko, the community, in prayer. As we're dealing with loss there. We've had 2 students that took their life, and
Mm,
there I participated in the prayer walk last night.
yeah.
We went to Mission, started at Mission with songs. We had the young men there, several of our Kiowa young men that had brought the drum, and they sang Kiowa hymns as well as several of our songs, along with prayer by Jay Mule and several songs that he shared. But it was a
Yeah.
powerful time, and I just ask for your just continued prayers and thoughts for the community, for the teachers, the students, the parents, and,
Hmm.
and just everyone in general, because I know our health and human service staff, they were there, they're mobilizing, and we're working on ways that we can help support and be a little more proactive down the road so that this doesn't happen again.
Absolutely. Thank you, Chairman. We will definitely keep them in prayer, the whole community. And I know, I know a lot of people have been posting about it on Facebook. Didn't quite know what was going on, but we appreciate the context and we'll keep them in prayer. Well,
Thank
thank
you.
you all for joining tonight. I'm going to close out this webinar and thank everybody. So I do encourage everyone to go onto the website, kiowatribe.org, check out the appropriation bill as well as a summary that's been posted already, and some more documents will follow to give us more information on transparency of this budget. So, Chairman, I look to having another discussion with you as we get closer to that vote, and so we'll get that on the books. But as for right
Yes.
now, thank you for kind of starting this conversation for District 7, and we'll put more information out in our newsletter coming out this month. All
Sounds good.
right. Have a good day. Be safe traveling, Chairman, and you all be safe tonight. Thank you so much. Aho, day on day.